Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of All Things IDA. This is the beginning of a series of how to work with the debugger programmatically. Today in particular we're going to cover the process state, loaded modules, and debug names. We cover how to enumerate the modules, get information about the loaded modules, and how to enumerate the debug names. So let's get started. Before we start with the SDK and talk how to do things programmatically, let's explain some concepts first. So right now, as it stands, we are not debugging. So basically, we're just regular static analysis mode. We're going to start the debugger. And now we are in a process state that is suspended, but we are under the debugger. Now, the second concept I'd like to explain is the modules. So once we open the modules window, we can see the modules. And then if we double click on the module, what we see here is names. Now those names are not necessarily just the exported names. It could be more stuff. It depends really if we decided to load the PDB as we've seen before. So WinMM, for example, has 193 names. But if we manage to load the PDB or load debug symbols, we might have more than that. So if I reopen it, I have now 1013 names. And so these are what IDA internally calls debug names. Just a generic term that designates names that are available when the debugger is available. So when we stop debugging, those names will disappear. So that's it basically with respect to the concepts. Now let's talk about programmatically accessing this information. So now let's stop debugging and explore first the process state. Let me open the snippet window and get started. So before we write code, let's look at the SDK. So for working with the debugger programmatically, we need to look for dbg.hpp. And for today, we're gonna just start with basic concepts. So we're gonna look at the get process state. So get process state gives us the state of the debuggy, so to say. So when we run it, we get one of the d state underscore. So the process state could be suspended, not running, or it's running. Basically, we can either terminate it or suspend. So now if we just rely on that, and we can say, for example, message, or let's say print IDAPy.get process state. This should give us, right now we're not debugging, should give us no task, so we should get 0. So here we got 0. Now let's run the process and get the process state. This time we should be getting suspended, since we are suspended here because of the breakpoint. So we got the -1, which is suspended. Now on the Win32 debugger in particular, IDA will not block if the process is running. So that means we could still interface with IDA, but most debuggers will show us a dialog that says suspend first, so that then we can interact with IDA. So just that you know, usually if you can ask for the process state, you might get state run that it is executing. Okay, so we have to be in a debugger state first in order to continue our tests. So the next thing we want to do is enumerate modules. So if I open the modules list, I want to see this, enumerate this programmatically. So for this as well, in the same header file, let's first start making a function here, def main, and if the process state not equal, let's resize a bit, dstate suspend, let's just ask the user to suspend the process first. Okay, so now after we have the process state, let's just make sure we invoke main, and now let's proceed to enumerating the modules programmatically. So for this, we're gonna use the get first module API. So the get first module is just really for working with modules. We have those two functions, get first module and get next module. We start enumerating with get first module, and we receive a mod info. Now in Python it's gonna look similar, and then we continue the iteration. So what is a mod info? Mod info describes a module that is loaded. So we get the name, base, and size. So let's write the loop. So we're gonna say mod equals IDAPython dot mod info underscore t. This is gonna be the recipient object, and then we can start the enumeration with get first module. So IDAPython dot get first module mod, and while true or while okay, let's print the information. So we're gonna print the base first, mod.base, then the name directly, let's say, and the size. And now, before we run, of course, we have to remember to enumerate next. So OK equals, and we do the same like we have in the C code here. So this should be good enough. Get next module. And this looks good. Save it, run it. And here we go. We got what we want. So these are all the loaded modules. So each one, the base and the size and so on. Okay, so now let's look at the debug names. So for debug names, we will go to the name.hpp. And we have methods like get, debug, name, and names, and so on. So first let's look at get debug names, which gives us a vector or an array of addresses and names. And this is the C++ basically version. So it's a vector of EA name, which is just an EA and a name. So we're gonna call this. It will give us the list of names and their addresses, and it needs a range. So we're gonna display all the debug names within the range of a module. So for that, we're going to say, by the way, if you're curious about this one, how we get the EA name vec and so on, this has been manually wrapped as well. We should see it in the wrappers, py wraps and name, py name. So get debug names has been overwritten, and it just in Python it takes just the range, and then it returns a dictionary with the name and the string. So it's of the name of the address. Okay. So here let's say debug names equals IDAPython.get debug names. We got the dictionary. So the range, we're gonna say module.base and module.base plus module.size. Now we can say EA and name and dnames.items since it's a dictionary, and we can just indent a bit and display the EA and the name. And maybe we can print a separator just to see how things look. Okay, let's save it and run it, and let's explore the result here. So we have the base module, the executable, and it doesn't have any debug names. Then we have VC runtime, and these are all the debug names that IDA automatically populated. So that's how we enumerate the names. Now let me pick some module and describe one last API. So for example, let's go to ntdll and let's create a new snippet. Okay. All right, so this is a good example here. Let's say we have the cursor somewhere here, which is in between one symbol here and another symbol above it. And that's our screen EA for now. So we have one more API that is relevant, which is get debug name. So it's supposed to give us a single debug name, but based on what exactly we're looking for. So debug name how we can get, if we give it an exact address, and if we say exact, we should really be giving an address exactly. So we can use this basically to get the nearest symbol after the address or before the address. So let's test it out here. Now the address, we're gonna use the screen EA. So we're gonna use, for example, idc dot here, and the debug name how. So let's try lower first. So debug name lower, IDAPy dot this. Maybe let's put this as a variable. And here we can say the name that we got. So here, because of the definition lower is gonna find an address name with address greater than the specified address. So from here, we should basically get the nearest name afterwards. We should get us this set IO completion callback. Let's try. So it did give us the set IO completion callback. So now let's position the cursor back here and use the other one. Nice. It will give us that address should be before specified, so it should be lower. So the nearest lower one is this one. So now let's just change this flag here to nice, and let's see how it works. So it did indeed give us the deregister weight. So these are useful stuff. We're gonna be doing practical stuff later on based on those APIs that we're learning. So that's it for today. I hope you found this episode useful, and as usual, please like and subscribe if you're finding value in this channel. Thank you very much, and see you next time.